Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our YouTube channel and the series dedicated to Microsoft Fabric data engineering and data science. This is Estera, your host. We have a unique guest, Ruixin, that visited last time to talk about R and using R in Microsoft Fabric. Today, we are going to talk and discuss not so comfortable topic because we are going to talk about money and we are going to talk about Copilot price. Russian, thanks for accepting the invitation and joining us here today.
Thank you, Estera. Yeah, I'm glad to take this opportunity to introduce the Copilot pricing work for all the audience here.
Let's start with just a simple question. A few weeks ago, we could see two announcements. First of all, the first announcement was that we as a Microsoft are going to charge for using Copilot.
Yes.
And I believe that all the users, our customers, as well as I, would love to understand what is the pricing about, how to calculate it. At the same time, there is a caveat that Microsoft also enabled Copilot by default,
Yes.
meaning that every user can leverage it. If someone is using Fabric, can use it, can leverage Copilot. Is that right?
Yes. Microsoft has already turned on the Copilot for Fabric for all tenants since last month. And the billing for Copilot was already started since March 1st. All the rates, we have published the document and a series of blogs introduce this, but I'm happy to go through it today. And generally speaking, the customers will be billed for the number of input and output tokens you used. This includes the entire prompts, like the sentence you input to the Copilot as an instruction, as well as like the system-generated one, which we'll explain in the next slides. And we got a lot of inquiry that whether user need to pay by additional capacity for Copilot. The answer is no. Also, Copilot will consume your existing Fabric capacity, but it requires a P1 or F64 or above SKU. Any trials or any SKUs that lower than that are not accepted.
Just to recap, so Copilot in Fabric has been auto-enabled for all tenants. For the single tenant that we are usually mapping with, let's assume that the one customer, one company, and that company can have multiple capacities.
Yes.
And capacity admins who are in charge of managing capacities can turn it off because
yes.
Is it enabled by default in those capacities as well?
It's it's enabled by default for all the capacities as well.
Yeah,
but the admin have the ability to turn it off.
And the here important point is that those who has the Fabric SKU higher than F64 or Power BI SKU P1 plus, they got Fabric. Those who are using below F64, they can't leverage it.
Yeah, currently they cannot leverage it. But we are exploring, we got a lot of inquiry, like user want to try it out using on the affordable SKU. We are working out whether, what's the plan to support that. But currently, we are not imported.
Got it.
We are not supported, yeah.
So here is one term I would love to get a clarification. What's token?
Oh, token. Actually, token is a unit of text, of character. Like if you, for example, give you one sentence, it could be one character or some word or a white space. The token really depends on the context. Sometimes, if your context is including like visual or chart, it have another way to translate those things into the number of tokens. So token is a unit that large language model used to do the prediction. And it's also the unit like we use to calculate the consumption.
Got it. So sometimes it can be a character, sometimes it can be a word. Many times we can play with Copilot also by sharing our code. So the magic that happens with mapping between the input and output to tokens is behind, right? And do you know any tools that are helping our customers to estimate or to monitor how many tokens they are using?
Yeah. I do have. I think in OpenAI they have some token estimator. You can input a text of language, and then it will return the number of tokens for this paragraph. We also hear some customer build their internal tools to try to predict and estimate the token. But in terms of in Fabric, I would like to say this is something in terms of the flow of data. As I mentioned before, we consider both the prompt, the sentence you input, as well as like we call it a meta prompt. Like our system will also add a bunch of information as the input based on your questions, based on the context. It could be like data paths of your lakehouse. It could be like the metadata of your table. So when we consider the input token, we consider both of your user input token as well as our system input token. So when you do the estimation, I think you could do the estimation of your user input, but in terms of the system input, it might be a little bit challenging for a user to estimate from your end. And another thing is that because for the whole Copilot in Fabric, we keep iterating the algorithm in the backend. Our engineer keep and improve it day after day, and we may also replace it with the most latest models. So the number of tokens, all of these things will impact the metadata prompt as well as the number of tokens. And in terms of the consumption rate, I would like to say like in Fabric, we charge users by the number of tokens, as we mentioned. We charge different price for input token as well as output token. For the input token, the consumption rate is 400 CU seconds per 1,000 token. For the output token, it's like 1,200 CU seconds per 1,000 tokens. And for a given task, the total consumption rate you cost will be the number of input token multiplied by the input rate plus the number of output token multiplied by the output consumption rate. And once you use the Copilot in Fabric, once you have done the operations, you can see your consumption rate from the Fabric Capacity Metrics app. In the Fabric Capacity Metrics app, you can see that there are various lines under this part, which is organized by your workspace, your artifact count, your artifact name, and if you hover it, you can see there is operation name called Copilot in Fabric. We use this operation to see all the consumption rate you have been spent for Copilot on this artifact. I will show you an example later. What does this mean? But here is how the information is exposed. So Microsoft Fabric have done all the aggregation and the calculation and show you the capacity unit you have been spent on your Copilot.
So is this view visible for users or only for admins?
I think you need to be capacity admin to see this. At least for your capacity admin can see this capacity metrics app. I'm just not quite sure how each enterprise companies manage their permission control, whether they expose this capacity metrics to all users. But when at least the capacity admin have the ability to set it up.
Understood.
And another thing is like in Fabric, if you are familiar with the capacity utilization type, there are two types of operations. One is like interactive, another one is background job. This concept will impact how the capacity throttling happen. And all the Fabric Copilot is classified as background job. So our goal is to support more Copilot requests during busy hours. It means that we will average or smooth your capacity usage of Copilot over a 24 hours period so that you can submit more Copilot usage in the peak hours before you get throttling.
Do we have any definition of those busy hours, or it's per individual company capacity?
I think it really depends on individual capacity, individual company's schedule. And you know that all these capacity units are shared across various workloads. For example, maybe some companies have some automatic traffic or auto run things happen in a certain period of time. It could also impact the capacity you can use for other tasks like a Copilot.
Can you explain the example of Copilot that you have on the screen presented?
Oh, you mean this one?
Yes, how the calculation is happening here.
This one is like, for example, imagine this is a Power BI Copilot you use to generate a report. And for each request, you generate 2,000 input token, and for each request, you generate 500 output token. And here is for one request. Here is the total CU consumption unit you cost, which is like the input token multiplied by the 400 CU. This is the consumption rate for your input token, and the 500 token multiplied by the output token consumption rate, and divided by the 1,000 token. So your request costs 1,400 CU seconds, which is 0.4 CU hours. And assume that you are using a F64 SQ. F64 SQ means you buy 64 CUs. So for the CU hours for one day you get is like 64 multiplied by 24 hours. It's like 1,000 and or 500 CU hours. Here is all the capacity you have, and here is one request that your Copilot cost. So we use this CU hours divided by the consumption unit that's requested for one Copilot request, which means that maximum request you could run at the same time is over 3,000. And this calculation is like based on an ideal case. There is no other ongoing operations running. So all the capacity will be dedicated for this Copilot. This is like an ideal example. Just to show you like what's the maximum request you could submit for the Copilot before you get throttling or before you get other blocked from our system. And another thing is like you be aware that all our Copilot is powered by the Azure OpenAI large language model. But the Azure OpenAI large language model, it requires GPUs to empower the computation. And now today we only have GPUs hosted in US and Europe. So we will do region mapping, cross-geographic region mapping. And another thing related to billing is that you may notice that Fabric have different price in different region. You may ask, oh, if I'm in, for example, I'm in Canada, and I can say there is Fabric capacity units price in Canada is different, like for example, like that in the US. I know that my capacity unit, my capacity is based in Canada, but my Copilot will be processed in the US. Which price I need to pay for my Copilot? The answer is that no matter which region your Copilot is mapped to, is processed, you always build based on the capacity units pricing in your capacity region, in the area like where your Fabric capacity is located. So no matter what happened behind the screen, like we map your request to different region, but we will always charge you using the price like your capacity is located. Here I'm going to show an end-to-end demo, show some case steps in end-to-end demo. I'm going to touch the Copilot for data flow to import data from data source. And then I'm going to use Copilot for data scientist and data engineering to do some data exploration. And then I'm going to use the Copilot in the Power BI report to generate the report. And then I'm going to show the capacity that we have consumed in this end-to-end flow. Here is my Fabric workspace. First of all, let me create a new data flow Gen 2. In the data flow, you can see that once I open this data flow, I can see that what this Copilot is showing up here. First thing, let me get some data. Click this Get Data button. And let me type all data. Paste the URL here. I will select the customers and also related tables and create here, load it into my data flow. I have this customer and the orders loaded here. Let's take a look at all these customers. Also, the customers from various cities, from various countries. So I would like to say like only keep customers from the USA, let's see what Copilot will do. Copilot will add a filter on the customer and only keep the US customers. As you can see, only keep the customer from US. You can explore and do various operations here. And once you are done the data cleaning, you can publish the data flow or add a data destination to Lakehouse to do the next step, which I have already have it in my Lakehouse. So let me go back to my workspace, and I like to go to my notebook. Let's see. In my notebook, I have already attached to a lakehouse. As I mentioned, I've already output my customers into my lakehouse. If you haven't, you need to export the data from the data flow to lakehouse and attach it here. First, run this cell. That started with my Notebook Copilot. Today in Notebook, I think you still need to install this package to make the Notebook Copilot work. So let me first install this package. Now leverage the Copilot in the Notebook to give me some guidance, helping to load these customers to data frame. So here is some quick example. You can do the first analysis, and once you clean up the customer, you can save it as a semantic model here. And from here, we can create a blank report, Power BI report. Also in this report, I have this Copilot. Let me create the report. Let's show customers distributed by city. Let's use that. Here you can see my report got generated. Again, you can do a further exploration, like show summary of this report, etc. Just to recap what I've done. I have using the data Copilot in the data flow to import some data. I have used Copilot in the notebook to do some data exploration, and I use the Copilot to generate a Power BI report. Now let me go back to my capacity metrics app to see my usage here. It may take a few minutes for your Copilot actions to show up in your capacity metrics app. Once it's completed, if you go to the capacity metrics on the compute page, under those items, you can see like under your workspace name, under your for example, under my artifact type data flow, I have my data flow 3. This is data flow name. If I hover it, I will see my operation like Copilot in Fabric and the CU seconds is there. As well as like in Notebook, I have seen my Copilot in Fabric, like the CU I have spent on the Notebook Copilot in the Copilot in Fabric under my Notebook name. Also in the Power BI report. So the idea is like different artifact have its own line, will show the detailed usage you have spent on that artifact in your capacity metrics app.
Let's start with questions. First of all, for those who have capacities lower than F64, can they leverage, or are there any plans to allow them to leverage Copilot?
Yeah, we do hear the user ask for that, and we are actually working out the plan, like how to support user to try out the Copilot on a more affordable SKU. So stay tuned. It's on our plan.
Great to hear it, because almost every blog post, question, presentation deck about Copilot was finishing with that question. And
yes.
I love to see that the feedback is reflected.
Yeah.
How to control the usage, how to make sure that, again, if this is a great tool, this can help with writing the queries, with analyzing the data, with building the reports in DW, DI, data engineering, data science, so many different colors, so many different places where we can use Copilot. But the risk is that, let's assume I'm in charge of my company, I allow this feature, it brings the productivity higher, but the cost can be enormous. How can I control?
Yeah, our suggestion is that you may try it out on 1 or 2 capacity, and you monitor the user pattern for your organization and the bill costed for the Copilot before you scale it up for the whole company. As I mentioned at the beginning, the Copilot can be controlled at the capacity level. That's also the thinking, like we want to give more power for the users to decide like how to roll it out within your organization.
Don't you plan to enable prepaid plan, meaning that, for example, I have 100 engineers in my organization. I would love them to leverage Copilot. I want to buy it just for them. Do you plan to enable it?
We are welcome to hear those type of questions, these suggestions. We also, one of the common asks, like our existing pricing model is a little bit too complex, and people prefer that kind of user-based license model. But so far, like Copilot is part of Fabric, so we follow the Fabric billing model. But we are open to hear user's voice. We are also share this feedback with our business planning team. I don't have any plan to share at this moment to change this billing model. But if customer you have this kind of suggestions, feel free to submit idea on the Fabric ideas. The more votes we get will help our product team to prioritize this work.
Before going to the next question, for those who are watching us, remember to leave your comment. You can leave your question here as well, that we can tackle and take in the upcoming episodes. But I have one more question. Those organizations that are based in European Union, for example, they have to face, and again, across the world, there are for sure many countries with the specific regulations that the data that they process basically cannot leave the country. How Copilot is aligned with those regulations like GDPR?
Yeah, as I mentioned, we respect this GDPR compliance, especially for the countries in the EU boundary. We have our GPUs deployed within the EU boundary. So for the countries in the EU boundary, all your requests will be processed using that deployment rather than send it to the US. That's our solution. We also in our tenant setting, there is a second heading like allow our request to be processed across geo. So even if if your organization wish to process your request outside of EU, you can turn it on. But otherwise, just keep it off. Keep that tenant setting off. So to make sure that all your requests will be processed within the EU boundary. Yeah.
Got it. So one more question out of curiosity. How do you measure, how you monitor that the results that Copilot produces are correct? What's the mechanism? Do you, for example, collect the likes button, or do you gather the feedback in the backend, some telemetry? How do you measure it?
I think that's a question for each feature team. For our team, we are mainly focused on the shared layers, like the billing, pricing, and the shared tenant. I think each feature team, like Fabric Copilot team, DDS Copilot team, and the warehouse team, they keep monitoring it. And the button you mentioned, like the feedback button and the unset score, I think all these things are. I noticed that they keep monitoring, and all this ongoing engagement with customers, the feedbacks, I think, are the channels. But it's better to ask next time when maybe, those people who join this Espresso, it's a good question to ask them.
Maybe you can invite someone from OpenAI, because again, this is the question also about what are the results, how the results coming from OpenAI, GPT-3, 4, whatever the model is behind the Copilot. I know that we cannot share it externally. Is that right?
Yeah. We cannot share. The model, we do not share it. For the Copilot, the model behind it, we do not share it.
Got it.
Out. Yeah.
But maybe you can ask a question to the OpenAI team.
But in our case, I think just expand it, not only for this. We have a special requirement, and I think users have special expectation for us because when they do this kind of data processing, they expect our Copilot understand their data. You're already in Fabric, you should know my data schema. If I ask you these questions, you give me a general answer, they are not happy. But for OpenAI, maybe that's okay. For us, I have this table, I have these numbers. You should know, you should understand the data well enough to give me exactly the data that I'm looking for, or the query the correct schema. I don't hear a customer have a higher expectation for our Copilot than the general large language model response. Yeah.
I understand. And as a Apache Spark lover, I would say that I would have the expectation that Copilot would produce a code that will be aligned with a Spark and Delta version. And in Fabric, maybe that's also a good opportunity to mention that in Fabric, we have multiple runtimes. Each runtime is based on different Apache Spark version, and as well the Delta Lake version. And if
Yes.
I'm using Copilot, so that's my feature request. If I'm using
Yeah.
Copilot, I would love to get the code that is tailored to the specific version, because
Yeah.
with the every new runtime version, we are getting more and more enhancements. The API is changing. Thankfully, it's growing and it's backward compatible. But at the same time, there are some unique features, like in a runtime based on Apache Spark 3.5, that is user-defined table function. I would love Copilot produces me that code that is specific, tailored also to my needs. But again, I will include that to the
Yeah.
ideas.fabric.microsoft.com.
That's our goal. That's our goal. Always catch up on the latest context in Fabric and get users to catch up on the latest updates.
Awesome. Ruixin, thanks a lot for joining and sharing all the knowledge, all the beautiful things that you are working on. For those who are watching us, remember to hit the like button, to subscribe this channel. We aim to publish the new episode every week about the data engineering, data science, data integration, real-time analytics that has been released a few weeks ago. And until the next time, happy writing code with Copilot and also exploring and checking the pricing. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bye-bye.